into and are into. Right, so just to look at some of those elevated risk themes now, more specifically, and as I say, these are just a few ideas to kick around to debate. And the reason why I guess we're sharing those with our audience today, which are mainly insurance brokers and some of other insurers, is that we see this as an area to hold conversations, to hold value-adding conversations with your clients, to try and mitigate against some of these risks. So in the area of general public liability, what we've noted in the past, and therefore what we expect to come, is areas of sham, slip and trip scams. So people are desperately looking for money all over the place, and we've noticed in a lot of instances, people will walk into shops, into shopping malls, into hotels, wherever, into casinos, and they will invent a slip and trip in order to sue, because they know that a lot of companies don't want the spotlight, they don't want the potential reputational impact, and so they will create a falsified slip and trip and try and claim money. And there are so many attorneys these days and legal professions that are looking for these guys to fill up their pockets as well and put pressure on corporates to pay out. And then we also anticipate potential food poisoning and infection allegations against companies. And so that could be an area of heightened risk, particularly for certain kind of companies. And then probably biggest of all are when we go into difficult times, there's the temptation for companies to save money. Their revenues are down. And so what we do is we turn to areas of cost reduction. And this could have significant impact in certain businesses, manufacturing, etc., where quality control, where certain, as I say, risk management is curtailed, and that could leave companies with huge product liability claims, defective work claims, and major reputational damage. So we really want to just appeal to companies and to insured clients and with their brokers to really, at this point in time, to really refrain from cutting those corners and reducing spend, because the knock-on effects in their liability program could be huge. And then we've just added a few risk mitigation tips where companies really need to keep investing in that staff training, in quality control, CCTV footage to look at the slip and trip, sham claims, etc., and solid, robust incident reporting. Just moving on to that, and then getting straight into the area of employee fraud. We did some research last year as part of our annual survey, and just to again share some of the highlights of that survey. Between 2008 and 2017, the average claim of commercial crime have increased fivefold, and 30% of cases involved senior employees, resulting in major losses, several losses between the bottom end of 50 to 60 million and upwards of 100 million. So certainly those kind of levels of fraud have to be committed by very senior executives who have the ability to override controls. And so looking at what we're facing now, many employees in an organization are going to be considered vulnerable, and they're going to be targets of crime syndicates, where crime syndicates target those employees, either offering them bribes or just actually threatening them and their families' well-being. So they will target those employees, and those employees will, given what we're looking at economically, with retrenchments, with downtime, with short pay, with reduced working hours, are going to become much more vulnerable than they've ever been. And so we really see a huge amount of fraud and dishonesty, and that upticking. And remember, some of these things are going to take a while, because a lot of crimes, particularly those committed by employees, they start off in desperate times when people are desperate. They start off very small, and then very few employees then stop stealing once they've got away with small amounts, and unfortunately it just grows. And I can share a personal story. Some time back in one of my previous roles as a CFO of a company, we had a payroll fraud, And just if you look at some of the risk mitigation tips, their lifestyle monitoring and audits, ensuring at least 2 weeks of continuous leave. And in fact, what happened in my story is I drove into the parking lot of our company headquarters at the time, been out for a lunch and came back, and the person who was committing the fraud, which was the head of our payroll HR team at the time, drove in front of me in a brand new car, and it was a very fancy Land Rover at the time, and that looked a little bit suspicious to me, and that actually just sparked my curiosity, and we started the investigation. And about 2 months later, after we'd pieced together evidence, we were in the December holiday break, and she was actually on leave at the time. She had, I think, 2 or 3 weeks leave booked off, and we were watching to see how she was committing the fraud, and whether there was anyone else involved with her. And she, in fact, actually came in on the critical day that the payroll had to be done and signed off. So she came back from leave for a day or 2 days, in fact, to actually perform her duties. And she used the excuse that she didn't want anyone else to see some of the sensitive payroll data. But that in itself was a telltale sign that she could never go on leave, and that she never allowed anyone else to perform a certain function. And so that becomes very important. What's also interesting behind that case was that we found out is that it started off with a very small level of employee fraud. So the amounts were small, and the story goes that she was covering medical expenses for a family member. So quite a sad case. But once those medical expenses had been covered, and she had actually got away with that small amount of fraud without being detected, what then transpired and what then grew is that those desperate needs that were being covered then developed into stealing for wants, desires, and addictions. And so that's how it grew. It never stopped once she had actually covered the basic needs of an ill family member. I'm going to touch very briefly on the cybercrime. I know one of our speakers later today, Candice, will be going into much more detail. So really, this is just a high level. Again, from our survey we ran last year, 1 in 5 businesses then had admitted that they had cybercrime in the past 24 months, and that has certainly probably spiked. Cybercrime, I think we've all now probably experienced something new in terms of remote working, where many of our employees, almost all of them, were working offsite from home, and that obviously has created a huge additional security exposure, and I guess that will continue for some time. I think given what's happening with all the emails going around and all the news reports and the feedback on health issues and statistics being shared and all sorts of newsworthy articles, it's just been prime time for phishing attacks. So we would have seen, and we've experienced as a business, I know as our group, Santam and Sanlam, there's been a huge focus on making all employees in the group aware of the additional security requirements and the additional risks from working at home. And of course, the massive spike in phishing attacks as a result of what's happening. So again, just some key mitigation tips. Continue to run antivirus software updates. Very often, as in our personal experience, if you don't come into the office and log in onto the network, some of those updates and patches don't update. So that leaves one exposed. We as a group have undertaken significant amounts of employee training. So we run these tutorials, these online tutorials, and all employees have to undertake these tutorials and demonstrate that they've been made aware of the additional risks. Of course, VPN connections and keeping those going still from home are significantly important. Then getting into the area of accident and health, personal accident insurance. Of course, a very direct risk there is the risk of workplace infection. And of course, that has not only the risk of shutting your business down, but huge reputational risk and the potential for fines and even criminal action if that infection risk is not managed and those protocols are not tightly managed at the workplace. So that's obviously a direct risk and impacts people's lives. What we've seen in the past, when we've gone into very difficult economic times, sometimes there's a tendency for redundancy redundancy actions by employers to be disguised as disability claims. So we are expecting quite a significant increase of disability claims, whereas in fact it's actually a form of a redundancy action where employers might be looking to give avoid the liability themselves and or give a soft landing to certain employees. Another big noticeable impact is that when employee engagement or employees are demoralized, there is a noticeable spike in workplace accidents. And that's really just simply employees could be, very fearful of retrenchment, or companies have undertaken retrenchments, and that has a huge impact on employee morale. Many of our employees could have had family members that have suffered from the disease, or we could have family members who we've seen have been retrenched or have lost their businesses, and that overall reduction in employee morale is likely to cause a spike in workplace accidents. Then, of course, the impact of crime in the workplace. As crime takes off, I mean, think of employees sitting in cell phone shops, jewelry shops, in areas where they're likely to be attacked, your security industry. So again, that could lead to increased health and wellness and disability claims. And then, of course, mental stress. Mental stress is often the precursor to other ailments and physical ailments. So again, just the major risk mitigation tips. I think it's at this point in time, more so than ever, that we as employers really need to stay very close and committed to our employees. We need to stay in contact with them. We need to gauge their level of happiness, and then provide as much support and that we can to those employees to deal with that. Then looking just at motor fleets, we also underwrite some of the major motor fleets, corporate motor fleets. Obviously, there's an expected uptick in hijacking syndicates. This could either be on its own or in collusion with employees. Typically, this is at a time now, and I know one of our other speakers will be talking to this in more detail, but fraudulent insurance claims, many companies who've experienced significant constraints, cash flow constraints, might be looking to take advantage of fraudulent insurance claims, inflated motor claim repair costs to cover insurance excesses, and then, of course, actually, again, going back to the earlier point, with many of the employees, driver fatigue setting in. So with reduced number of employees, so companies retrenching, they might be expecting some of their drivers to do increased shifts, etc. And then cost cutting in terms of tires, maintenance of vehicles, etc. All of which are likely to lead to a significant or potentially significant increase in motor vehicle claims across corporate fleets. And again, just touching on some of the risk mitigation tips there, an improvement and investment in tracking technologies, specialist claims investigators into suspicious claims, and again, reaching out to employees and ensuring that we are giving them as much support as possible for the difficult times that they're facing and potential demoralized employees. And then just keeping up a commitment now to the risk management program, because I think companies, whilst they'll be tempted to cut corners, I think it needs to be pointed out that that could have more longer term negative impacts to their businesses. Right. Just looking at another area of business, D&O, and the directors and officers exposure. This is obviously quite a big talking point across the industry, the global industry as well. And again, we're expecting to obviously see notable claims coming in from stakeholders or shareholders for companies that where they are going to question maybe some of the contingency planning, some of the preventative measures taken by directors, increased cybersecurity, financial result forecasts, etc. So another area of elevated risk in this class of business. And again, some ideas and tips there that we can share with you guys to deal with this risk. And I think just to wrap up, I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I think what we're suggesting is that now more than ever is a time for companies not to panic, for companies not to be tempted into really cutting corners, and to think long term in how they deal with these risks, because insurance really is just part of the solution of managing risk. It's the risk management decisions, it's the investment in good risk management protocols, and I think investment employees and their well-being and support that is going to make all the difference in how we manage many of these risks today. And I think that really brings my formal presentation to a close. Guys, I think it's been lovely to share this information with you, and we look forward to supporting everyone out there in solutions to deal with these elevated risks. And that's me, over and out, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gareth. That was extremely informative and I guess scary at points, but really something that we can all work on collaboratively. Just a reminder to all of you at home, if you do have questions for Gareth, you can use the Zoom chat, or if you're watching on YouTube, the chat facility down the side of the screen. Something else that I would also like to remind you of is that, of course, this session is credited with 2.5 hours of CPD by the IISA. And we're very fortunate yet again to be joined by Thokozile Mahlangu for our regular update on matters from the Insurance Institute of South Africa. Thokozile really needs very little introduction. Safe to say that she leads the charge at the Insurance Institute, and I think you'll agree does a phenomenal job of advancing the professional and strategic objectives of our industry. And with that, over to you, Thokozile.
Morning. Yet another session of the InsureTalk. What a great initiative. Today I'm going to talk about the role of a professional body and the importance of becoming a professional member. The role of a professional body is to promote public understanding and trust in the insurance profession, in our case, encourage international best practices, encourage continuing professional development, and award designations by accrediting individuals that have the necessary experience and or qualifications. So as a professional member, you become a prestigious member. It puts you in good standing within the industry. It gives you recognition that you have the necessary qualification, experience, skills, and knowledge to operate within the profession. You also get access to online CPD monitoring, tracking at your own leisure. We also give you access to discounted training sessions, and in certain instances, free assurance career advice on how you can progress from where you are into the next level or what you can explore within the profession. We also give you access to research work that we get from our partners overseas, who are also professional bodies or other bodies and associations that we belong to. We also really give you peer-to-peer connect with other professionals within the insurance industry. You get access to business engagements. Some people call it networking, but you get access where you can learn and enhance your knowledge through engagements with other professionals. So why don't you become a professional member? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm also struggling with my own technology here today. Thank you so much, Thokozile. I think it's really wonderful that the CPD process, and much like this event today, have just carried on seamlessly, or at least it appears seamless. I know the people that put these things together, a lot of work goes into it, but that we've really just managed to carry on with our professional development in spite of the virus. In fact, many would argue that because of it, we've probably accelerated our learning because we've got a little bit more time, and we are of course sitting in front of our computers a little more than we would have been before. So thank you again, Thokozile. I think that's very valuable. Next up, we're joined by Garth de Klerk, who's the CEO of the Insurance Crime Bureau. He's also the tallest person I know, which generally gives him an overview of most things. Today, however, he's going to be talking us through fraud working at home. Garth, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Simon. Being tall gives me an advantage of seeing the top of your head, which is not a great advantage at the best of times. So I've shared my screen, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share with your delegates this morning a little bit more on fraud. I think Gareth touched on a couple of the elements that I'm going to unpack in some more detail. And it's quite exciting to see the fact that there's a number of familiar names in the participants as well. So for those of you who have seen this presentation before, in fact, I think I did it the week before last for ISA, sit back, relax, get another cup of coffee. Candice is coming up soon on the cybercrime side. So I'd like to start off just quickly by reminding you a little bit about the Insurance Crime Bureau, just to give you an overview of who we are and why we are able to do what we do. Today's discussion is fraud is also working at home. So, we've all gone home. We are limited in the ability to maybe interact with our clients, with our fellow colleagues, with our bosses, with our management team. And the criminals are loving this because we have broken our own internal processes and controls. And really, this is the challenge now so we've broken the internal processes and controls. How do we ensure that criminals do not actually take advantage of our organization? And this is the real challenge now, as to, how do we think differently? Very quickly, the vision and mission of the Insurance Crime Bureau is to detect, prevent, and combat syndicated fraud. So we are not claims assessors that are sitting there saying, listen, I know that you've claimed for a left-hand indicator, but the accident was on the right-hand side. That's not our job. Our job is to take an overview as to what is syndicated activity within the insurance industry. And we'll touch on that a little bit more later. It's very focused around community. When we talk about the Insurance Crime Bureau, we don't talk about the team that normally sits in Midrand. It's now all over Joburg, Gauteng, some guys are in Balfour, some guys are in Heidelberg, Sandton, etc. But it's not about us as an organization. It's really more about the community that is responsible for and that is qualified to fight crime within the insurance industry of South Africa. And it's very important when we talk about the term communitas, it refers to large group affiliations. Because if we don't know something, I'm betting you somebody on this call does. If we don't have access to information, I'm betting you somebody on the call does. There's a lot of technology out there that we don't all have our fingers on the button of. But I see that there are technology providers within the group today that know they can assist us in this fight against crime. So it's really all about community. Talking about community, what is most important to us is our members that support us, our members that provide us with funding, the members that provide us with information, and really the members that join hands to fight crime in this environment. A couple of years ago when we started, we had 8 members. We grew to about 16 members in 2014. We are now sitting at 34 members that are full insurance licenses that are assisting the Insurance Crime Bureau in mitigating fraud risk within South Africa. And normally if I was presenting to a live audience, I'd ask you to raise your hands and tell me how many of you have been a victim of physical crime. Because in South Africa, fraud is actually a contact sport. In order for me to sell a vehicle or to incorrectly finance a vehicle or to false insure a vehicle or to stage an accident in a vehicle, actually have to steal that vehicle from you. And we all know in South Africa, and I'll touch on it a little bit later, hijacking, vehicle theft, vehicle smash and grabs, remote jamming, etc., is at an all-time high. And I'm telling you, it's going to increase dramatically. And again, I'll touch on that later. So fraud is a contact sport. When we talk about physical crime in South Africa, it is because the criminals can. And that's what we're trying to combat. We've also got some associate members like Data.Mohawk, PMD, TraceTech, SAS, SMD, who support us in the fight against fraud. And they are members that are associated within the insurance industry that provide product and services to the insurance industry that we believe in, that we know will make a difference in the fight against crime. So some of them support us financially, some of them support us through information, some of them support us through technology. Also then just some stakeholder mapping to show you how big the community needs to be in fighting crime. This is not a brag list of friends. This is a reality list of people that we deal with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. This morning, I have been WhatsApping with parties like law enforcement involved, for example, in the Zondo Commission. We are on a SAPS roadblock yesterday where we recovered a hijacked vehicle that is linked to one of the big blue light gangs that we are investigating. So in order to fight crime, we can't just point and say, oh, look, there's fraud, there's crime. You actually need to physically mitigate the risk. You need to physically go out into the environment, put your hand on the shoulder of the criminal. And that's where being tall sometimes does help, although I don't really do it, I just talk about it. But it does help to have partners in the law enforcement space, in the prosecutory space, in the information space, etc., that can help us with the fight. All right, so let's get to the topic that we are talking about today. Fraud is continuing to work at home. What do we do at the Insurance Crime Bureau? And this is the key to my presentation. It is really about how do we get out there and stop people from abusing the insurance industry? I think if you're involved in the industry now, you would have seen over the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of handouts. And when I say handouts, not people giving to the industry, people putting their hand out to the industry to say, please help us. Please help us with funding. Please help us with intelligence. Please help us with paying claims, whatever it might be. So when we look at the insurance industry, we say our motto is we are there to pay valid claims. And there's some very sensitive issues around at the moment, like, and Gareth mentioned it, business interruption, slip and trips, etc., where it becomes very difficult to prove a claim. It becomes very difficult to validate the genuineness of a claim. So when we as an industry look at where fraud happens, these are the main areas where fraud happens. So serial habitual claimants, incident staging, hijackings, theft, walking dead, murder for money, etc. And I'm going to touch on how this is increasing at the moment and how we are seeing an uptick in some of these MOs. Just for some of you, I think we're probably talking to more of a short-term audience today than life and funeral. Walking Dead is not a mini-series on Mnet. Walking Dead is a list of people that have claimed on their own lives, or they've had a family member claim on their lives in 2012, 2013, 2016, and then again twice last week. So it is a list of thousands of ID numbers, thousands of individuals that have had multiple death claims. Now, let me clarify, there's nothing wrong with having 5 funeral policies. If you are fully paid up, you can have 5 funeral policies, but you can only die once. And that's the trick, is these guys are dying in 2012, 2014, 2015, and then again twice last week. So Walking Dead and Murder for Money is a very, very popular MO that we are seeing an increase in activity in at the moment. So before we get into where we're seeing the activity, let's talk about people. And again, Gareth touched a little bit on this. He talked about an increase in crime. He talked about an increase in unemployment. Now, officially, our unemployment rates at February, March 2020 was around 23 to 30%, depending on which economist you listen to. We had a conference in March, and one of the speakers was an economist that sits on President Ramaphosa's advisory team. And she says the true unemployment of South Africa is probably closer to 50%. 50%. And the bad news was that was in March 2020. So we can only imagine how the unemployment within the affected communities has increased from 50 to somewhere much higher than that. So when we look at the different types of people, the first type is the inherently honest. These people will not commit crime. I like to think of myself as one of these people, but if you talk to my daughters and they ask where their latest bar one is that they had in the fridge, they will not believe that I'm inherently honest. But genuinely, these people would not necessarily commit crime. However, the second type of person is an opportunistic criminal. So if the need arises, if the opportunity arises, like when I open the fridge and I see that bar one and I need that bar one at 9 o'clock at night, the need is there, the opportunity is there, that bar one disappears. The need that we are seeing in South Africa at the moment is desperation. We have seen the economy fall through the bin. I saw one of the headlines this morning, the South African business confidence measurement has dropped by 20%. Linked to that, the bank transactions have also fallen dramatically. So banking transactions falling is a very bad indicator, because that means that money is not flowing. People are no longer needing to transact with their bank because they do not have funding. So the need is there, the need is arising, and this is where we are going to see an uptick in physical crime and, of course, in fraud. And then you get the professional criminals who are also always looking for or designing schemes in which to perpetrate a crime. And it was quite interesting. The first 6 weeks of lockdown, we actually saw a lot of these professional criminals quieten down. We saw these professional criminals almost took a break, where they were no longer as active as they were. And one of the suspicions was, and Gareth mentioned internal syndicates, was because the internal controls of organizations had been affected by everybody going home, the professional syndicates were no longer able to effectively operate. Very interesting. But we saw a whole lot of new names popping out, especially in the murder for money and the Walking Dead categories on the life side. So very interesting that when we go back to the office, if we see these old syndicates popping out of the woodwork again, it's going to be because there are internal players in our organizations that are perpetrating fraud. And these syndicates are dependent on our controls actually being in place. So let me ask you, what does a criminal look like? And I'm prepared to bet that when I say what does a criminal look like, all of us have got a go-to vision. All of us have got a go-to image. So you automatically have a specific mental image. When Candace talks later about cyber criminals, I bet you've got a mental image of a guy huddled over a PC in a dark room with a hoodie, probably between 20 and 35 years old. Let me tell you how wrong you are. Every interaction that we have with a stranger, or even in some cases, somebody that you might know well, that interaction has to be guarded. Because your colleague sitting next to you, that lady who drove in, I think Gareth said, in a Land Rover, could well be the kingpin of a criminal syndicate operating within your environment. All right, so let's have a look then at COVID-19 driving opportunistic crime. And this is where we, as the Insurance Crime Bureau, have seen an uptick. The first area is in our favorite area, fast track claims. It is very easy for me to lose my cell phone. 20,000 Rand cell phone, I can lose it, I can get the upgrade, I can sell this one, I can do a whole lot of things. Fast track claim, I would expect my insurer to pay out my cell phone 4 hours to 12 hours. Very little proof. I need a CAS number. I maybe need a blacklisting number. If I can't get you a blacklisting number, that's not a problem. I'll lose my laptop. If you want a CAS number, that's not a problem. I know what a CAS number looks like. Very few insurers are going to phone the local police station and confirm a CAS number. Keys, glasses, anything that I can lose quickly, that I can claim quickly, we are seeing an immediate uptick in this type of stuff. Why? Because I've been stuck at home. I can't drive my car into a tree because now I'm going to have to explain why I was out. So we saw motor vehicle incidences dropping off. We saw kilometers traveled in April drop down to probably less than 30% of a normal month. Then we talk about incident staging, and incident staging here is, again, Gareth touched on some of it, false retrenchment claims, false UIF claims. Within the first 3 weeks, the UIF was swamped, overloaded with claims. And as they were working through it, they were finding employers were claiming because they didn't want to pay their staff. They were finding employees were claiming where the employer was paying them. So they were looking for double payouts. The system was swamped. Credit life claims, we all know credit life policy is if I've taken out, I bought a 50,000 Rand lounge suite from my favorite uncle in the furniture business, and I want to insure myself against loss of income. It's very difficult to underwrite loss of income, especially in this period where nobody's at work, you can't easily confirm whether the person's lost their job, etc., etc. So credit life claims just shot through the roof. Slip and trips. My favorite shopping center down the road has just installed the slippiest, and if you live in Four Ways, you'll know which shopping center I'm talking about, set of tiles. There have been a number of incidents in that shopping center. It would be very believable if I went there and fell and broke my hip. And if you know me, that would be very believable. False disabilities, false business interruption claims, loss of income claims, etc., etc. We have seen a very big uptick in claims out of desperation in these environments. Moving on, and I'm not going to go into cyber in too much detail because Candice will give a great presentation later on cyber. But impersonation is something, please, we're warning people to watch out for. There have been some great impersonation claims going around where people are pretending to be your bank, your corporate. I've even had a couple phone calls from charities begging for money, playing on the heartstrings. And the people are shocked when I'm saying, okay, I'm just going to confirm your bank account actually belongs to the charity. They put out by the fact that I think they might be lying to me. I'm saying, you know, I get lied to as a profession. I'm going to check before I donate anything, even to a well-known charity. So if you get a phone call from a charity, if you get a phone call from a bank, if you get a phone call from your insurer who's saying they're phoning from the call center, I'm sure Candice will say this, validate who you are talking to. Because if you do not know who you are talking to, you could be talking to a syndicate or a kingpin. And then murder, we are seeing an increase in false funeral policies. It is very easy for me to take out a policy on my cousin, my auntie, my uncle, without their knowledge, without their consent. I will then pay the premium. I will make sure that they fall off a bridge. Or what I like is My favorite is what I call lead poisoning. So somebody gets stabbed to death or they get shot. And then I claim. And it's a 50, 100,000 Rand claim. It gets processed pretty quickly. There are even some underwriters in Joburg that will give you a double up on your payment if you die from unnatural causes. So for example, murder. If I wait for you to die, I get 100. If I kill you, I get 200. My last word on this slide is really communicate, network, train. There is just not enough communication, network, and training like these InsureTalk sessions. We also work very closely with ISA. We've done a session last week. We're doing another session end of July. It's all about learning from each other. None of us know everything. We need to learn from each other. So in conclusion, our observations is we will not win this fight alone. Going back to the first slides that are brought up, communitas, community, working together, being able to work as a team, as an industry. You are part of the solution. If you see it, report it. And then one of my favorite sayings is really the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And I think we have seen that in the world in the last couple of weeks. And there are very diverse opinions on the way forward and the way that the world is moving. But bringing it back to our local environment, I genuinely believe that a company is judged by the people it keeps. Talk to each other, learn from each other, network with each other. And that's me for today. I want to say thank you again to the organizers. If there have been any questions, I will answer them on the chat. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the session. I'm particularly looking forward to the entertainment now. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Garth. Yeah, really frightening insights there, but you do provide an extremely valuable service. So we thank you for that. I just want to take the opportunity to remind everyone that we will be hosting InsureTalk3 on the 16th of July. That event is sponsored by Santam. So if you like what you see here today, please join us for that event too. And spread the word. There is an early bird discount, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But now, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binaries, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to our virtual stage a man who reads minds and foretells the future. Also, probably the only person who was actually prepared for the pandemic, the amazing, the incredible, and the all-seeing Larry Soffer.
Thank you very much, Simon. What an introduction. Thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Larry Soffer, and I'm a mentalist. I read minds, I predict the future, I bend metal, I do weird and wonderful things, and you guys are going to get to experience some of that here today. So before I get started, I'd like to invite some of the panelists that are already on the board so we can have things go as fast as possible, just to come and join me. So we can have Candice, we can have Garth that was just on, and if you could just unmute yourselves and switch your cameras on, and then if we could have anybody else, I guess, could we have Kurt? Okay, not Kurt, sorry, Ibrahim Kurabali. If you guys could switch on your cameras, and then you'll appear on the screen with me. And then everybody at home, if you could keep yourselves on gallery mode, then that way you'll see every single picture, including me, and you'll get to experience the impossible and see the great reactions at the same time. So if we could get their cameras on, I see that they are unmuted.
Sorry.
If you could put your cameras on.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I can't turn my camera on, Larry.
Yeah, also can't. Because the host has to do it.
Oh, I see. Okay, we'll switch your camera. There we go.
There you go.
Right. And then Ibrahim will switch your camera on as well. Thank you. Great. Nice to have you guys here. So we're going to get started with a little bit of a warm-up just to get you into the swing of things. So everybody raise your right hand like this. And take your index finger and your thumb and place it together. And take that circle and place it on your chin. I see you guys were pretty sharp. This is your chin, Ibrahim. Okay. So I'm sure everybody at home got caught out with that one too, but I'm glad that you're all here with me right now. And we're going to have a lot of fun. I actually had a dream about you guys last night. And in my dream, I imagined somebody taking a card, like choosing a card. And in fact, that person, I think, is Ibrahim. In fact, Ibrahim, last night, we've never met before, right? Ibrahim?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. If you could turn your mic up a little bit, but we've never met before, right?
No, we haven't.
Okay, great. So I had a dream about you last night, and in my dream, you chose a card. I saw which card you chose. This morning, I turned that card upside down in this pack. So if you had to think of a card right now, and it had to match that card that's upside down, that'd be insane, right?
Yeah,
What card would you think of, nice and loud so everybody can hear?
I'd say Ace of Spades.
This is so weird because I have one card that's turned face down in the entire face-up pack. Right here in front, you can see that's one card that's turned face down in the entire face-up pack. Wouldn't it be so weird if that was the...
No ways. No
so
ways.
Crazy, right? Now, I want to take this a little bit further. In fact, I'd like to get into some mind reading right now. And Candice, would you mind helping me out with this?
Sure.
Great. So Candice, I want you to imagine that you're searching for a celebrity. In your mind, you're going onto Google and you're searching for a celebrity. And imagine as if you were really doing it and you're finding an article. And do you have a celebrity in mind right now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. And it's totally fine for you guys to interact with me. There's not going to be any feedback or anything like that. When there's 4 or 5 panelists and myself, there's no feedback. So you guys can totally go wild and like have as much enthusiasm as you want. You can clap. Everybody at home, you're very welcome to clap. There's not going to be any feedback, okay?
Candice swear.
Candice, if this excites you, you can swear as much as you like. Okay, so Candice, you've got a celebrity in your mind right now. Imagine you're looking at an article and you're going down through the article and you're choosing a word out of that article. Have you got a word in mind?
Yes.
Great. I want you to think of the first letter of that word and just in your mind, repeat that first letter over and over like R. R. Actually, wait. That's a bit strange. You wanted to think of something with an R and then you changed your mind. Is that a letter N?
Yes.
And you did want to think of something that began with an R, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Can you spell out the word that you ended up choosing just in your mind, never out loud? Start now. Stop. That was an M for Mary.
Yes.
Perfect. You're doing amazingly. From the letter M, keep spelling now. Stop. That was another letter R. And in your mind, you skipped all the way to the end of the word. You were thinking, this is crazy because somehow Larry's in my head and he knows what I'm thinking. And you looked at the letter S right at the end, right?
Yes.
I have no idea what your word is. And just so everybody knows, I haven't told you what to think of. You haven't told me what to think of. This is totally random, right?
Correct.
We've never met before. Is that true?
No, I wish.
Okay, cool. So Candice, I want you to spell out your word letter by letter, just in your mind. Once again, never out loud. I'm going to try and get this from your mind right now. You're thinking of one of billions of words. If I could get this word from your mind right now, this would be crazy, right?
Yes.
Great.
Crazy.
Spell out your word in your mind, never out loud. Start now. Okay, I'm getting something here, Candice. Candice, I'm getting, did you want to think of no, wait, before I say that, did you want to think of recommended?
Yes. That was my original word and then I changed.
And then you changed your mind. What did you change your mind to?
Numerous.
Numerous?
What?
Thank you very much. Now, the celebrity that you have in your mind, never tell me what you're thinking of, just the celebrity that you have in your mind right now. I want you to just think of this person. I'm getting this as a female, right? Is it a female?
Yes.
Great. I'm getting female, yes. I'm getting a very famous person, but somebody who's not as contemporary as she used to be.
Yes.
In fact, I'm getting an idea of a guy in your mind. Are you thinking of a guy that was related with her? I'm getting that you almost wanted to think of, was that Brad Pitt?
Yes.
And you changed your mind. You thought of Jennifer Aniston?
Yes. What the?
That's
It is great.
insane, right? Say that again.
I need to go have a nap. I can't.
I
Yes.
totally understand. And in your mind, Candace, before you thought of a celebrity, you thought that you wanted to think of a family member, right?
Yes.
In fact, I'm getting this as a female that you wanted to think of, and then you changed your mind. You thought of the celebrity because that's what I asked you to think of. But there's no way that I could know what this family member's name is, right?
Correct.
It's not possible. Not on Facebook. Nobody over here could have told me. Nothing like that, right?
We're not friends on Facebook, but we will be after this.
Okay, cool, great. So I want you to think of this person in your mind. Just think about who this is. I'm definitely getting a female, and I'm getting, it's a sister, yes?
Yes.
In fact, I'm getting your sister's also blonde, and I'm getting
Yes.
she's also a very excitable, fun, loving kind of character.
Yes.
I'm getting that the relationship that you have with your sister now is great, and most of your life it has been great, but there was like a section of like 2 years or so where you had a little bit more distance.
Yes.
Now, none of this information could I know. You haven't told me. It's impossible, right? If I could get your sister's name right now, this would be a total freak out, right?
I'll die.
Okay, so here we go, Candace. In your mind, you're going to say hello and say her name. Never say anything out loud. Never move your lips. We're going to do this now. So you'd say hello. Cindy?
Yes.
So crazy, right? Now, you've been so fantastic, Candace. I would like to use, let's use Garth, and let's use, Simon, would you like to partake in this, or would you like me to use Ibrahim again?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted there, but I know you can read mine, so it wouldn't have mattered.
No
No, I'm
problem.
happy to take part. In fact, no, let's use Ibrahim again. I
Okay,
want to
cool.
see him freak out.
Okay, great.
Me too.
So if you guys are enjoying this, please comment down in the chat. We'd love to hear your comments. Can you guys see this over here?
No.
Great. So this is basically a little box, a clear box with a question mark inside and with a piece of paper. On that piece of paper is a prediction, and I'm hoping that prediction matches what's about to happen. Now, I know during lockdown, we're not allowed to travel anywhere. We can't travel out of our country, but I do believe that with our imagination, we can break all boundaries. So Garth and Ibrahim, you're going to help me out right now. Garth, I want you to imagine that you're in a city. In any city that you would like to be in the world right now. It could be a place that you've already been to, or could be a place that you want to go to. It doesn't have to be a city. It could be a country, it could be a town, absolutely anything. And you're sitting there in a coffee shop with Ibrahim and myself. What is the name of that city?
Prague.
Prague?
Yep.
Prague.
Great. So that's amazing that you thought of Prague, and I'll show you why in just a moment. This is so crazy. I'm also going to set my watch to a particular time. Ibrahim, you sitting in that coffee shop with Garth and myself, you're looking across the way, and there's a big building, and on that building, there's a clock. What is the hour from 1 to 12 in that clock?
Let's go 3.
3. And what is the minute?
27.
Wow, that's pretty exact.
Yeah.
27. This is so crazy because before I got started, I set my watch to exactly.
6. No.
No way.
Get that into the screen there for you guys. Can you see that?
What?
Right there. Yes.
No ways.
No ways.
3:27 exactly.
Guys, I think no.
No ways.
Crazy, right?
Dude, we
And
coming
God,
to visit you.
Yeah, no. We need to investigate this guy, God.
Yeah, no.
Now, after what's about to happen, God's definitely going to want to investigate me, because inside this box, there's been a piece of paper that's been sitting in the entire time. It's been sealed. Garth, you chose any place that you would like to be in.
No.
You chose Prague. And before we got started, I wrote down,
No.
No way.
What?
I changed my mind.
Prague.
Like,
Thank you very much. I don't know if you guys can see that over there. Let me just get the lighting right so you can see that. Prague, exactly. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for having me.
Congrats,
I'm
man.
Larry Soffer.
Wow.
Enjoy the rest of the events.
No, no ways.
Larry, we coming
Okay,
for
I
you.
think yeah, that was amazing. Thank you, Larry.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, thanks to all the volunteers. Anyone who wants to hire Larry as an underwriter or a claims investigator, please chat to his manager, Sonette. But yeah, back to business. Up next, we're joined by Candice Sutherland, who's a cyber underwriter at I2. And she is going to be taking us through the frightening world of cybercrime in a time of Corona. Over to you, Candice.
Thank you. My mind is blown. I need to go have a nap. This is going to be tough. If you can just let me know if the video is on the screen.
Not yet.
Okay, you tell me when. Okay, give me 1 sec. Sorry. I don't know what I'm doing.
You're a little bit rattled.
I need to
Okay,
go
yeah, screen sharing has commenced. We're seeing part of your presentation.
Okay. Good?
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Woo! Okay, let me just collect myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Candice. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, a very big special thank you to CIB, who's asked me to do this presentation. So I'm going to be chatting about coronavirus, my least favorite C word, cybercrime during this time. And what we've seen is that cyber criminals show no ethical boundaries and will continue to attack wherever there is a vulnerability. Microsoft found hackers have launched coronavirus-themed cyber attacks in every single country in the world. The success of these attacks has a direct correlation to the growth of the pandemic, and countries with the highest outbreak numbers are also the most affected by COVID-themed clickbait. Hackers strike when countries are in the peak of the pandemic and citizens are looking for health information online. And since January, there have been 16,000 new coronavirus-related domains were registered. The hacktivist group called Elite Hackers have attacked the World Health Organization. Their Chief Information Security Officer, Flavio Aggio, said that since Corona, cyber attacks have more than doubled. Cyber criminals had hit a COVID-19 vaccine testing facility with ransomware, meaning they couldn't release any of their results until they had paid that ransom. And healthcare workers are being targeted with Windows malware using coronavirus as a headline. Hackers have forced the Italian Social Security website to shut down the day of their most vulnerable participants started lodging claims for the €600 crisis payout. So there's absolutely no opportunity like a virus, like a pandemic to launch some new cyber attacks. So let's chat about clickbait. So clickbait is an email that you will receive seeming to be from a legitimate source to try and get you to click on a link so that it would then take you to a fictitious site. You would put in your bank account details. These are some examples that you can see on the screen of clickbait that's been sent around the world. And it will say, this is what's going to help you. You need to click on this link so that you can get your payout. People will click on the link. It takes them to a very legitimate looking website. These criminals are fantastic in terms of recreating sites to look exactly like the original. And then when you're on there, you'll put in your details, your name, your surname, your ID number, bank account details so that you can get your UIF payout as an example, but it's actually not the genuine site. So a lot of companies around the world have modified their logo to try and deal with the pandemic. So we can see Audi has now separated the rings, saying keep your distance. Google has widened their logo. Microsoft has stretched out the block. Chanel has separated the C's. KFC, Colonel Sanders has a little mask on. McDonald's have split the M. Red Bull, instead of having the balls facing towards each other, they're now facing opposite directions. Starbucks has the little mask on as well, and VW has separated the V and the W. So companies around the world have tried to take this pandemic with a bit of light heart. i2 has also changed their logo, so this is what our new isolation logo would look like during this time. But what we know is that we have to be really, the thing that you can't control, right, is your staff. So these are some examples of what people have used during video calls. You know, they get up, they've got their underwear on, they have inappropriate art in the background when they're on a Zoom call. And it's your staff that are the ones that are your biggest risk in terms of cybercrime, because your staff are the ones that will bypass the rules at any opportunity they get. So I want to touch on a subject called Zoom bombing. So Zoom bombing is when an uninvited person joins a Zoom meeting. Anyone who finds the link online can join that meeting, and then it is an unwanted intrusion by an individual with the intention of causing disruption. It's going from a professional meeting like we're in right now to an episode of Tiger King in seconds. Some South African examples, EWN posted this. So this was a video meeting hosted by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. That meeting was hacked, which resulted in journalists seeing pornographic images instead of the live feed. The very next day, the National Assembly's Programming Committee, their meeting was also intercepted. 50 seconds into that meeting, while the DA chief whip was proposing the agenda, porn flashed all over the screens. The hacker proceeded to then racially abuse Thandi Modise, who was trying to chair that meeting. And that's a very unfortunate situation. How do you deal with that? Would you be prepared, or would you just freeze and panic? If we look at this article that was shared by Melrose Church on Sunday, the 17th of May, it said, "We are disgusted by the unfortunate incident that occurred yesterday during our live stream Sunday service. Our screen share was hacked by an unknown person who displayed content of a pornographic nature. The content was extremely traumatic for us as a congregation, and Melrose Church unreservedly apologizes for the trauma and hurt inflicted on each and every one of our viewers by this disgusting display on our live stream, especially as we are mindful that you and your children may have been part of the service." So something that can really negatively affect the reputation of a company and something you have absolutely no control over. Zoom has launched Zoom version 5. If you have not upgraded, please do that. And they have really improved their security around doing these live chats. So let's chat about cybercrime in South Africa. And in the recent Ponemon data breach study, so there are a total of 2 surveys done, which include South African companies. One is the Ponemon data breach study, which is sponsored by IBM, so you know it's good. And the second one is the Norton Semantic Report, also fantastic. But there are no other surveys globally that would include South African statistics. So according to these reports, the average number of breached records in 2019 was 21,090 records, and 2018 was 24,615. The average cost per lost or stolen record is 1,775 Rand. So the age-old question of how much cyber insurance must I buy? One method is to take the amount of employees that you have, take the amount of clients, consultants, suppliers, any other record that you would store, because a cyber policy responds to your employees as well as your clients. Add that number together, times it by 1,775, and that will give you a rough indication on the minimum cyber insurance level you should purchase. So if you are the Department of Joburg and you have the details of 85% of South African residents, this calculation isn't really going to work. But if you're an insurance broker and you want to understand what your exposure is, number of employees, number of clients times 1775, and that should be the minimum limit that you purchase. The average total cost of a data breach in 2019 cost 32 million Rand. So regardless of what entity you are, whether you're an attorney or an insurance broker or somebody else, could you sustain a loss of 32 million Rand? My guess is no, especially after this sort of pandemic season that we're going through. South Africa has the highest global probability of a repeat data breach. And why that is concerning, because we will get requests for cyber insurance. The client has had an incident already, but they have done nothing to remediate their systems. You know, they got their next door neighbor's son who studied computers in 2006 to come in and see what's happening. They ran the backups from yesterday, so the data's back, but those hackers are still sitting on your system. So if they're going to hack you and hold you to ransom for 5,000 Rand today, tomorrow it will be 10,000. You need to get them off your system as quickly as possible. And we have the highest global probability of a repeat data breach. So the global average was 27.9 and South Africa was 43%, which is crazy. So what does a cyber policy cover? The triggers are a network breach or a privacy breach. It doesn't have to be both. Sometimes it can be both, but it could be either or. So a privacy breach is a breach of confidentiality or right to privacy of any employee or any third party of the insured. A network breach means you must be hacked. So there's a lot of words on the screen. All it means is that you must be hacked. If you are hacked, the policy will respond. So what does the policy actually cover? Your module A is cyber liability, and that is the defense and settlement of a third-party claim arising from compromised data through the privacy breach, or defense and settlement of a third-party claim because of the system failure. So because you were hacked, if your clients then sue you for the financial loss and trauma that they've suffered because of that hack, your cyber liability is the defense and settlement of those claims. The fines and penalties, these are the fines and penalties to the extent insurable by law. What Poppy has said is because it's strict liability, meaning no negligence is required, you are able to insure that fine. So hypothetical situation, my personal cell phone with my work emails, my client list, my underwriting guides is stolen, and somebody manages to get into that device because I don't have a passcode, because that's just inconvenient, then we could be sued for a privacy breach because whoever steals this device would have access to our entire client database. Is it my fault that the cell phone was stolen? So even if I wasn't negligent, let's say I'm waiting outside a restaurant for my Uber to arrive, and while looking at my phone, somebody runs past and grabs my device because then it is unlocked. We could face a 10 million Rand fine under POPI, being the Protection of Personal Information Act. Even though there was no negligence on my behalf, you can still face that fine. And for that reason, you are able to insure it. Your crisis management and notification expenses, these would cover the cost to notify every single employee, every single customer, client, supplier, patient, regardless of what the business does. And bearing in mind that a company that has a computer, an employee, or a client has a cyber exposure. So I don't want to hear, oh, I spoke to my attorney client that deals with divorce law and they don't have a cyber exposure. Every single company in South Africa has a cyber crime exposure. So the notifications expenses will pay for the cost to notify every single person that you've dealt with to say, company X has been hacked, we've had a privacy breach, this is what you need to do. The PR campaign, very important, because how do you quantify what your reputational damage is? Excluding Corona, on the 1st of January, you had 100 customers. February, you were hacked. By May, you've only got 30. If you had a PR company to deal with that reputational damage associated with the breach, potentially those customers, you would have retained more. Remediation services, these would cover things like credit and identity theft monitoring for every person affected by that breach, because I can claim that my loss is X, but it doesn't mean that it was. So the credit and identity theft monitoring will help, and it's for a period of 12 months. It will help everybody affected by your company being hacked. It will help them monitor their accounts, and also the identity theft, so no fictitious accounts are created in their name. Your data recovery and business interruption module. This is the expenses of a specialist to investigate, contain, manage, and recover your IT system from that incident. And this is not your next door neighbor that studied computers in 2006. This is what these companies specialize in. It would also include things like your network or business interruption. So the time that you are down, if you're down for a period of 3 days, that is a loss of business income to you as a company. And cyber insurance is the only business interruption that doesn't require physical damage to trigger. It would also cover the cost to restore and recover any of your data. So if that data is encrypted and you are held to ransom, it's cost to restore and recover the data so that you hopefully don't have to pay that ransom. Increased cost of working, things like staff overtime. So if all of your staff members have to work an entire weekend to get you back up because your bordereaux haven't been able to be sent out, then this would cover things like staff overtime. And then the lost business income as well is also covered by the policy. In terms of the cyber extortion module, this is expenses for specialists to investigate and mitigate the cyber extortion threat. So have you received an email, and I'll just use you as an example, Simon, saying, "Hi, Simon, I've been spying on you through your webcam cover, and I've seen that you are looking at pornography. I'm going to send those videos to your wife, your church, your shareholders." Now, if you have been looking at porn, be concerned. But if you haven't, or you have a webcam cover on, then you know it's not actually a legitimate threat. It is a spam email, a phishing email. It's clickbait trying to get you to pay a ransom for something that actually doesn't even exist. Where required, the expenses will negotiate and settle that extortion amount. So they will pay the ransom. And this is quite a controversial subject. So let's pretend that you are an insurance broker that has been in business since 1996. You have every single record that you've ever stored. You don't just abide by the FSCA rules that says you have to maintain records for 5 years. You've got every single record. Somebody encrypts that data, which means you cannot access it at all. You don't have a cyber insurance policy. You don't know who to call. If you don't pay that ransom, whoever has managed to encrypt your data will delete your company. Because if you're not going to give me what I want as the hacker, which is the ransom I've demanded, I'm going to destroy you. So they will delete your company. You don't have any cloud backups. Your backups are connected to the mainframe, or there's an automatic sync with your backups. Therefore, your backups are also encrypted. So it is sometimes a better business decision to pay that ransom, and we'll negotiate it as low as possible, and then get your data back. But then it is important to rectify the system so that the hackers can't ever do it again. Because if you pay the ransom once, you'll pay it again. The digital media liability, this would be following acts of defamation, unintentional infringement, unintentional invasion of privacy, public disclosure of private facts that has happened because somebody hacked you, or things like social media content. It includes all digital media content, text, graphics, audio, video, whatever. And it's you being sued for something that would happen on social media. There are some optional extensions on the policy. So to just give you a brief overview, the initial response phase, what that will do is it will waive the deductible for a period of 48 or 72 hours. This is not a module that you would purchase if you are buying R1 million cover. This is for your higher limits. So probably I'd say anything over 25, maybe 50, 100 million rand. And your deductible is quite high, R1 million, 500,000. Then you would purchase initial response phase, and that would waive your deductible for a period of 48 or 72 hours. E-financial loss, it is not the intention of a cyber policy to cover funds that have been stolen. The intention of a cyber policy is a reactive incident response policy to a network breach or a privacy breach, but you can extend the policy and endorse it to cover e-financial loss, which will cover funds for which the insured is legally responsible as a direct result of a system security incident. So if you are hacked and somebody steals money from your bank account, if you have e-financial loss, you can cover that. It is limited. Happy to chat about that later. OSP would be your outsourced service provider. So if you have an outsourced service provider that can access your systems, all of your clients' information, it would make sense for you to extend your cyber policy to cover that OSP for the services that they provide to you. It wouldn't give them full cyber insurance policy. It's purely just for the services that they provide to you. Physical damage would be if through a network breach, physical damage is caused, not applicable to every single company. Phone phreaking is when somebody manages to intercept your VoIP or your phone lines, and your average phone bill is 4,000 to 5,000 Rand, and the following month you get a 35,000 or 750,000 Rand phone bill because somebody has intercepted your phone lines and they're calling premium rated numbers through your actual VoIP system. And then PCI, so PCI DSS is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. If you are a company that accepts payments via debit or credit card, or you have a point of sale device, so example, a petrol station, you must be PCI DSS accredited in order to accept payment via debit or credit card. So this module would cover those fines and that increased exposure by accepting and storing credit card details. So what can you do, not just in a time of coronavirus, but what can you do to protect your company? Number one, reboot your laptop at least twice a week, because that way your security patches and updates will be installed and applied. Don't just close your laptop at the end of your workday, reboot it completely, start it from scratch. Do not let your children use your work laptop for homeschool or playing games, because it is amazing what a pet or a child can navigate to when you're not looking. Lock your device, even when you're working from home. As I said, it is amazing what a child can email or download or access a video, trying it in a professional meeting and you've got kids screaming in the back. Ensure that your Wi-Fi connection is secure, and I will send you an email about how to do this. Use a password for private meetings, and where possible, manage those participants. So only if you have registered, exactly like CN&CO have done for this event, only once you've registered for that event would you get the code to actually be able to log in. It's not just posted on Facebook like, hey world, everybody come and join. And then be vigilant and be on the lookout for potential phishing scams and malicious emails. Nobody is going to give you anything for free. So if something is for free, you get what you pay for. Be careful, be careful, be careful. I cannot stress that enough. I'm going to close with this video, which I think is hilarious.
Open to slide 3 from the PDF I sent you this
morning. Can I actually hop off this call since I'm not on this account?
It's no problem.
Okay,
Go ahead, Sean.
Sure. Let's just start off with January 2020. Now, consumer spending is up. If you look at the graph right below.
What page are we on?
I'm sorry, we're on page 12, the second graph from the top.
Okay.
Danielle, turn your camera off.
All right. So if you look, we're 0.15% higher than 2019. We started this quarter off at 2.75%.
Holy shit.
Daniel.
God.
I don't think he's
Daniel.
January.
Daniel.
Daniel.
Call Mika.
Oh my God.
Call Daniel on his cell. Call Daniel on his cell. How do we turn this sheet off?
Wow.
We can't.
Oh, hell no.
Daniel. Oh my God. Daniel is the host. Holy shit.
This is recording.
Oh my God. Oh.
Yes.
Daniel.
No.
Open to slide 3.
So that is it from me. Thank you so much for your time. If you'd like to contact somebody from CIB, please feel free to contact John Smith. Alternatively, if you'd like to get in touch with me, here are my contact details. A big thank you to CIB for allowing me to present, and to CN&CO. It's been an amazing experience. Larry Soffer blew my mind. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Candice. It's always a pleasure to share the stage with you, albeit a virtual one in this instance. So thank you so much for that. Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Nazrin Salih, who heads up ERM at Santam. And she's going to be sharing some insights on enterprise risk management, especially in the current climate. So yeah, thanks, Naz. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. That was so interesting, Candace. It's going to be a tough act to follow. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. It's Murphy's Law, because like 2 minutes before my slot, my connection started going wonky. So let's hope that it's stable and everything works out. And yeah, I'm going to just bear with me quickly. Sorry, guys, I'm just looking for my PowerPoint.
Nazrin, this is the definition of infinity, is the amount of time that it takes to go live and find your presentation.
Typical, I know, this is so risk management, hey, because it worked the whole time. I saw it here through all the other participants' chats, and now I can't seem to find it. But I'm doing exactly what Llewellyn said I should do. So please just bear with me, guys. I'm almost there. I'm just going to try this again. And there's everything here but my PowerPoint slides.
Have you opened the PowerPoint on your computer already?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my connection that was whack. Do you guys see this? Yeah. Everybody can see that. I think everybody can see that. Okay, cool.
We can.
So thanks. Cool. Thanks, Simon. So there will be no return to normal, and perhaps we should start there. The coronavirus is permanently reshaping the way we live in. Some of the behaviors developed in the crisis, including wide-scale digital adoption, will outlast the pandemic well after restrictions of activity are lifted. To stay competitive, organizations must respond to these behavioral changes and meet emerging customer demands. Savvy organizations will focus now on leveraging advanced analytics to extract insights from their customer data and continue internal and external data integration efforts to develop a more holistic view. Detecting those signals of change early will be crucial to optimizing the customer experience and redefining the needs. So my chat today will cover, we'll set the scene, and I'd like to talk to you guys briefly about just what ERM is and how we fit into an organization. We'll cover what this new reality is, how we will manage risks through this COVID-19 period and beyond. I'll talk about key
we seem to have lost Nazrin there. Llewellyn, can you just reach out to her on WhatsApp and let her know that we seem to have lost signal? Sorry about that, everyone. Technology doesn't always play along with us. Yeah, look, I'd really like to just comment on. Hi, Naz, you're back.
Sorry, Simon, you're going to be babysitting me through this. My connection has literally gone completely wonky for my slot. So
okay, when you start your presentation, let's kill your video. So you can mute your camera, and that might just preserve the bandwidth a little. Andre Simons, you're up next.
Let's try that.
About this tech stuff. Thank you.
So should I just go stop video, Simon? Shall we just try that and just keep my presentation up? Hey.
Start the presentation first, and then you can turn off your camera.
Okay, cool. So I've got that going. And I'm going to
in the
stop
meantime,
my video. Cool. Everybody see my slide?
they're not coming up just yet.
And now?
No, I'm not seeing them. Okay,
No.
let's turn your camera on again.
Okay, cool.
I was just chatting to one of the other speakers earlier about how often the video conferencing facilities are so heavily influenced by the bandwidth, especially in corporates. Okay, we can see your presentation. Do you want to start it again?
Okay, awesome. Let's start it again. And then I'm not going to turn off the video. Maybe you guys can manipulate it on that side in case I do something wrong. Okay, everybody see my video, my screen?
Yes, we can, Nazrin.
Okay, awesome. Here we go. All right, so we'll cover this today, is what I said before I got chucked off. So I don't know where we were, but we'll go through this. And maybe just to set the scene quickly on what ERM is as a function, because I'm not sure how diverse this morning's audience is, and I don't want anybody to feel disconnected from my content. So I'll be speaking very much from an ERM perspective and probably referencing the insurance sector quite a bit, because this is, the sector I live in, and happy to take questions and all of that once we're done. So ERM is a second line of defense function. And what I projected there is just the lines of defense model that we use in the greater governance space. So a second line of defense function is mandated by the board to protect stakeholder value by proactively identifying, analyzing, assessing, monitoring, and reporting risks throughout an organization. We are also responsible for business continuity in the event of a disaster. So typically ERM functions within this period. I mean, this is a practical example of a crisis. So it's literally your crisis management plan in action. And what we're doing at Santam is literally using the learnings from this COVID nightmare, and then doing debriefs. We've scheduled debriefs and learnings after this, instead of doing a crisis management exercise for this year. So always seeing opportunity and glass half full, because there's never going to be a better crisis meetings. We are not audit, which would typically be, sit within the third line of defense. And hence we don't need to maintain independence. And I thought that this point is important because that's what differentiates us from, for example, internal and external audit functions. Risk management is in an ethical approach to managing the control environment. The last thing you want is somebody worried that you are holding the stick and then will just report stuff for the sake of reporting it, or fudging reports, etc. So we pride ourselves on our approach. ERM provides guidance and frameworks to support business in implementing policies and maintaining an adequate control environment. And yeah, like I said, we're also responsible for business continuity management. So we facilitate a business continuity management program that draws on IT's involvement via with disaster recovery, and we work a lot with facilities teams in maintaining and ensuring that that buildings are compliant, and we've all seen it now with the OHSA regulations and how we need to ensure that our buildings are compliant before we bring our people back in, a staggered responsible approach. So this new reality, if there were any lingering doubts about the necessity of digital transformation, I mean, we can see it today just by holding this session digitally. I think the coronavirus has seriously customers and employees must take place
Oh, Naz, I'm sorry. We seem to be having ongoing problems. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but your sound has gone. While we wait for Naz to return, I would, of course, just like to remind you that we've got another one of these coming up soon. So on the 16th of July, we have InsureTalk3, which is sponsored by Santam. So remember, if you like what you see today, please join us for that event. There's an early bird discount of 10%, and you can go to CN&CO. That's written out, not with an ampersand in the middle. CN&CoEvents.com, and you can book there, and you'll get a 10% discount if you book soon. And once again, these events don't happen by accident. Obviously, appreciate that there are those of you that have paid to be with us today, but we must, of course, thank our sponsors. Nazrin, are you back?
I'm back. I'm back. I might have been talking to myself for a little bit, Simon. My apologies. I keep losing connection. Can everybody see my screen now?
Not at the moment. Just hold on. I'm going to just exit.
Okay. I'm sorry. I've got a... Gonna see if I can do that again.
We see your presentation.
You see my presentation. Okay, so I think what I should do is I should really like zip through it until my internet connection is unstable. Okay.
Sorry, Nazrin. It's really, I think it's becoming unworkable. It seems that your connection is kind of going in and out with increasing frequency. I hate to cut anybody off, particularly from Santam, who pay my salary. But I was wondering if we couldn't make your presentation available, and if possible, we can record some of the commentary and post it with the rest of the content a little bit later, rather than you kind of having to restart all the time. Would you be okay with that? Naz, are you there? Okay, yeah, sorry about that, folks. It's not a perfect science, and we have connections running on both sides when we do this. Naz and Santam, apologies for that. As I said, we'll make that presentation available, and maybe we can find a way to get some commentary from Nazrin after we publish it. Okay, so I think it's probably best that we move on. Sorry, let me just get to my own. So the irony of what I'm about to tell you is really not lost on me, because our next speaker and I were having a conversation on LinkedIn yesterday, in fact. And one of the things that we were talking about was how tricky it often is to, the video conferencing, there's obviously no doubt about the importance of it, but how tricky it often is to get a kind of seamless meeting going. And Andre Symes, who I'm going to introduce you to now, obviously in the tech industry, is a big proponent of video conferencing. And I think much like me, although he does longer distance commuting, is often working in different places and communicating with people even in other countries. So Andre, yeah, without further ado, you're the managing director of Genesis Technologies, and it's a real pleasure and a privilege to have you here with us on InsureTalk. So over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Just a tiny correction there. I'm the MD of the international business. Our very, very famous Eugene Wessels is the MD of the company back in South Africa. And yes, as you say, yesterday we were having that chat about the VPN connections and the frequency, and I thought actually I'll build a little bit of it into the presentation today. And as you said, I'm sitting in a very wet and cold London at the moment, but I could be sitting next door. And I think that's part and parcel of the attraction of technology going forward. But as we just saw from the previous presentation, it isn't always smooth, and the new normal, as we were talking about, isn't exactly perfect yet. But let me quickly share my screen. There we go. Right, is that being shared?
Yes, it is, Andre.
Fantastic. So at first I was going to have a conversation about insurance technology during Corona. And the more research I was doing, it just really seemed very boring. So what I thought I would do is I'd pivot a little bit more to insurance, obviously, and then a little bit broader technology, not just the policy administration systems during the Corona. And it's what we now call, it's been coroned. And that is a real word. You can go check it out on Urban Dictionary. It actually exists. I'm sure many of you saw this meme during the Corona period. And I got into a little bit of trouble when this thing came out, when I said that, look, everybody has magically moved back to working from home, and we did it relatively seamlessly. There was obviously challenges, and we'll unpack some of them now. But when I tweeted out saying that the rate at which we all transitioned to work from home exposed that it was never a technology issue, but rather a management problem, management culture problem, some people weren't that happy with me. The post got a lot of likes, predominantly from the youngsters in the industry that obviously prefer working from home. The areas that I just wanted to touch on briefly today that have been impacted are the operations. The industry and operations has been affected. Most of us are right now sitting from home, and we have been for months. This wasn't normal a few months ago. When it comes to well-used phrases in South Africa, my favorite overused one is "no gaan ons braai." I think it's quickly going to be replaced by the new normal. And what we're doing today is pretty much the new normal. So it has a bit of merit in it. Another area that we're going to touch on a little bit is new distribution models. I think one of the things in insurance that has really been impacted negatively by COVID is our broker channels, and how also some of the retail distribution models have been affected negatively. Security, we're going to touch on briefly. I've had to, at a whim, really reduce my security slide deck because Candice and Gareth and Garth did such an amazing job. I had to do some pivots earlier today while watching. And then last but definitely not least is that there's been some impacts on the people in our industry, us. And how has technology helped us? And also, how has it been to the detriment of some of our staffing? For anybody that knows London, this is Leadenhall. And we went from what you see on the left there to what we see on the right there in 1 week. I went for a cycle the day after lockdown was announced into the city centre in London, and there was just nobody there. Usually, this is in front of Lloyd's of London, and billions of pounds of business gets done there every single day. And poof, overnight it was gone. And up until this moment, I wasn't really that concerned, to be quite honest, and until I saw everything was just gone. And I remember giving my business partner, Craig Olifield, who you might know from the InsureTalk scene in South Africa, a shout saying, look, dude, I think that this is going to be a lot bigger than what we thought, and we're probably in for a rough ride. But, as we've seen, I think fortunately, we've kind of come out on the other end. But the question that we have to pose is that when the market goes from what you see on the right to what you see on the left to the right, how do we pivot from what you see on the left to, I think the I2 team was some of the best work from home attires. It's not as simple as saying, right, everybody go home right now. There's many things that are needed. You need infrastructure. You need new policy for HR. You need new standard operating procedure documentation. Very importantly, new IT policies. Then you must start thinking about, what do you do about claims processing? How do you do financial authorizations within your IT system? It has to move from department to department. You don't have that anymore, the physical contact. Heavens, how do you just connect to your operating system from home? Many systems have been built specifically to keep people out. And now by design, we are having to let people back in from the outside. And that created some real big challenges. Then, as you can see on the left-hand side, a lot of people still use desktops at the office. I believe that some laptop sales guys must have made their budget by April this year. I know of one insurer who placed an order of 2,000 HP laptops in one go. South Africa doesn't carry that kind of stock. So there was a massive tooling issue. And then when you get home, what do you start doing about printers? Now you need paper. And the big thing is that we had the solutions in place already. It's called cloud technology. We just needed something to push us to start using that. So what challenges did we face with technology in the insurance industry? Firstly, it was digital versus manual. Many people believe that their systems are fully digital. They simply are not. Some territories don't allow things like e-signatures on documentation. You need a wet signature. It's quite popular in Japan, what's needed in Japan. But in South Africa, it's not really a legislative issue. It is more a tooling issue. People, they just don't have paperless environments. Another really big challenge that we saw was simple channel overload. Centers were inundated with calls about coverage. People were confused. Do I have critical illness cover? Do I have BI cover? The business interruption cover misalignment between client and insurer has led to some of the largest class action suits we've now seen in the UK. People like Hiscox and Royal Sun Alliance are being taken to court for the amount of 5 billion rand, and is growing every day. That is massive brand damage. But what they had to do is that they had to stick to their policy wording, because as Garth and Gareth and Sand also Candice was saying, that people were taking chances. So they had to take a firm stance on what their policy wording was saying. Just some real data, one of our clients here in the UK, they received more queries on their critical illness cover product in the last 6 weeks than they've done in the last 6 years. And that just shows when people start worrying about what's going to happen, they need to call someone. But now, how do you replace that digitally? Claims during lockdown is another concern. Digital claim assessment and validation is going to become a much bigger focus. We've already seen the use of satellites and drones doing that for very specialist products and risks in South Africa, particularly around agri. But how do we pivot that onto the mainstream? When you have cool InsureTalk tools, and one of the people that we work with quite closely is a company called Extract360, and they allow you to digitally rebuild a motor vehicle accident scene. And when you start coupling this with some really good data from people like DataWalk, you can actually see very quickly whether there's potential fraud around this claim, and then you can only focus your claims assessment on that. And when you have your assessors being physically restricted from moving, digital insight into these events really does help. And then another big challenge was accessibility. And we saw it now with a previous speaker. I was having a chat with some of the executives at Vodacom recently, and they've seen a 60% uptake in data in the last 3 months, 60% jump in data consumption. That is massive. So the infrastructure is busy scaling. It's not perfect yet, but it is getting there. Accessibility is a big thing. And then, as we mentioned, there's been an increase in fraud, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. I think the previous presenters did a really, really good job at that. But it was the stance of the insurers to push back on iffy claims that have led to some of these lawsuits that we are seeing at the moment. And then another concern for some of the larger organizations and challenges that we've had to help some of our clients with is, how do you start integrating your offshore workforce, if you are using offshoring, with your onshore, when there are two different sets of rules that the people are working for? When you're under a single organization, you're multinational, it's a little bit easier because you still have one HR organization or department that looks after everybody. But when it's two different vendors having to talk to each other from two different parts of the world, it starts creating some real challenges around that. So what are the lessons learned from this? And I think we can all agree that we need to be able to access our operating platforms anywhere and anytime to help our clients, specifically around claims during these times. We need to be paperless. And that is not just our own systems that have to be paperless. We also need to be able to communicate with our part suppliers, our part sources, our third parties in a digital manner. Otherwise, we're just creating another set where we need to put tooling in place and probably have to end up buying fax machines again. And we really don't want to be there. I know my friend Claire Wood from Inesis really agrees with me on this one particular point. That is, we should always try and automate the process, the entire process, not just the task. And that is often a bigger picture that we have to look at. Sorry, I just skipped a slide there by accident. But the one part about process automation that we should not push too hard is when it comes to sensitivities, and that's around claims. While we can do lots of interactions with our clients via chat, Nobody really wants to be speaking to Alexa when they are sad or concerned. We need to have empathy. And the one nice thing about when you start digitally creating an optimized straight-through processing organization is that you can free up some resourcing, human resourcing, that you can then redeploy to really give your clients a fulfilling and meaningful claims engagement, particularly during crises like this when everybody's nervous and everybody's worried and scared. And then very importantly, we should also be able to give clients access to the information, their claims information in real time. When you order a takeaway on one of these apps, Mr. D in South Africa, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, whatever, you can track where your burger is at any time. Why can't I do that for my claim? I want to know where my claim is. I want to know where the repair is. There's no reason why we can't do this, and we should. We just need to make sure that we have the systems in place that can actually facilitate this. Then when it comes to distribution, there's been some substantial impacts here. And simply put, many brokers do not have the infrastructure that their product providers do. Lots of regional brokers out there can't access these systems. They don't have the same full 5G coverage now that everybody else has. And they're very paper-based. How do we help them? And then also from an affinity partner point of view, when insurance isn't your main priority, and all of a sudden the crocodiles are snapping at your heels because retail is going down, you're going to pivot away from that. If dealing with a product provider to sell their products is too much of a hassle, and you've got other concerns, they drop down the priority list. So how do we as the insurance industry go back up that list? I think it's very important. And then talking about this change in retail, some of the South African lockdown rules have been sillier than others. And I'm pretty sure that you guys are very frustrated compared to us here in the UK. But the one that I really couldn't get my head around was the ban on retail shopping. I'm very glad that they've now lifted that. And this has also prompted South Africa to start looking at online retail a little bit more seriously. And then very importantly, and I think one of the biggest focuses here in London at the moment is the neobank and challenger bank emergence. These guys are really, really good at creating digital journeys. And with traditional banks closing their bricks and mortar shops down and not having a really cool and slick digital journey, they are going to create a vacuum. And boy, can these neobanks suck up that vacuum when they need to. Just for some data information here, just to look at that. HSBC is one of the biggest banks we know in the world. And to get onto their platform, you have to go onto their website, then go through 99 clicks to open an account, then get the app and get onto it. With someone like Revolut, it's 24 clicks and you have it. Another really, really big part of the growth on the right-hand side there, where we can see how COVID has affected app download and app utilization. And the biggest areas there have been in online retail, real estate, digital bond origination, and social media usage. And these are all great opportunities for new affinity distribution if you have the system that can leverage it. So when you're shopping for an insurance platform, it is well worth your while to spend some extra time interrogating the potential supplier's API capabilities. You really need to have a product provider that can supply good quality and comprehensive API integrations into these various areas. And the one that has grown quite a bit in utilization, and we spoke a bit about it earlier, is video chat. How you want to leverage that for insurance growth, I think that's up to your imagination. But just some data on that is that Microsoft Teams went from 20 million users to 42 million users in 4 months. Zoom, which a lot of us are using, and we're using it right now, their share price went up from less than $100 a share before lockdown, and I think last night they closed at about $219 a share. And I know this because my Revolut bank account allows me to buy Zoom shares whenever I want. And this is obviously becoming more and more interesting for a lot of people. And I must give kudos to Easy Equities in South Africa, who offer a very similar service. And if you haven't checked that out yet, I think you should. It just shows you what good digital journey and digital experience can do for a product. It's not all doom and gloom though, and particularly if you are in the startup space. Some of the latest information here from Datacom's Tech Nation, and have a look at their website, they've got some really, really cool dashboarding, is that at least banking and insurance is going to recover for startups. That's quite nice. And you can see at the top there, digital health, food delivery, gaming, and dating is really the standout, the benefactors of the unfortunate situation that we're finding ourselves in at the moment. Then just some considerations on distribution. Now, while product providers do often provide some level of broker system, they are created to solely provide that product provider's product. And that's great, but not necessarily the best for the broker. If we truly want to support brokers going forward, we have to create a mechanism and a platform for them where they can have a selection of different products that they can provide simultaneously without having to use 15 different systems. It is probably not going to be good for their business to try and run 15 different platforms. They're going to create massive inefficiencies, and the brokers are already under a lot of pressure when it comes to RDR. To really leverage these affinity partners, these potential affinity partners, these fast-growing affinity partners, you need to look at technology that can help you integrate it. We spoke about APIs. And another way of doing it is looking at something like a widget technology, where you can actually embed your product directly into your affinity partners' websites and control your product from a remote location and always have the rules and rating under your personal control. And then last but least, no, not definitely not least, is that, you know, the near challenge of banks integration is going to be key for insurance, I believe. And a lot of people are queuing up to do that here in the UK. But some points to consider, though, is that whilst they can onboard clients very quickly, their clients are very moody and will switch quickly. Switching between challenger banks is very simple. So you don't have that same stickiness. So they currently and always have to be cool, trendy, and innovative. And the problem is that currently insurance isn't. So a lot of challenges that the large organizations are facing is that how do we actually get brand approval from the newer and challenger banks? Because insurance isn't cool and it currently probably doesn't have a good reputation considering some of the big lawsuits that we are seeing. And while some insurance is cool and is starting to come out, you know, Lemonade is now filed for IPO. What is a couple of $100 million in a $1 trillion industry? We still need to see insurance becoming a lot cooler very quickly. And then, yeah, like I said, you know, the previous presenters covered the security very, very well. So when I heard that Simon was going to be the host today and I had to cover some cybersecurity, it immediately felt like I was going on to the insurance apprentice and I was nervous as hell. And I'm sure that he and Candice and Garthan will have some much deeper insights into some of these figures. But just what I was wanting to just brush over here quickly is NTT's latest analysis on cybersecurity in South Africa. And what's concerning is that it looks like, and it is, according to their data, that we, insurance, is currently the biggest targets of cybercrime. So I think that we should take the advice that was given to us earlier a little bit more seriously than before. And then I was surprised that no one mentioned it, but you know, one of the big hacks that's currently going on right at the moment is Honda, the car manufacturer. And it's currently unfolding as we speak. They've been very, very hush-hush about the real world impact. And you know, it's another big thing that, you know, that Candice and Simon will know about. It's often very good to not talk about data breaches. It's bad for business to mention it. You know, this is why we have these ransomware attacks. But kind of, you know, word on the underground, and we've got some ethical hackers in our organization, so they kind of keep their ear close to the ground about what's happening in these places, is that they've launched a snake ransomware that is attacking multiple of their operating and manufacturing plants, so much so that they've shut these factories down. So what you actually see on video on Twitter about these hundreds of thousands of, or sorry, thousands of workers leaving the factories versus what they're putting out to press doesn't quite line up. So as this unfolds over the next few days, I'm pretty sure that we'll see a little bit more information coming out from Honda about this latest big hack. And then Beasley, who leads some of the cyber insurance here in London, have said that they've seen a 25% spike in ransomware attacks during Corona. As we said, with everybody trying to get back into systems that have been designed to keep people out, it creates weaknesses, and you know, and hackers are going to exploit that. I think that was mentioned earlier before. And then so because everybody covered cybersecurity so well, I thought, well, you know, let's talk about other elements of cyber fraud. If you're a motorsport fan like me, what you see there on the left is kind of what we've had to look at or watch for Formula One for the last few months. And whilst it's not great, it's probably still better than trying to watch a MotoGP rider play PlayStation against another MotoGP rider on some Facebook stream. That was really very, very boring. But just to put this picture in context, this chap here on the left-hand side, his name's Daniel Apt, and he's a real-world racing driver. And he was participating in an online event. Esports is becoming massive. It is now $1 billion a year industry, and it's growing very quickly, projected to be around a $70 billion industry in the next 2 years. But in any case, he was participating in a race and against other real-world racing drivers, and there was some prize money at stake. So what did he do? He got the esport driving champion to log in as him and race on his behalf, and no one was none the wiser until he got caught out a little bit later. So some of the online fraud is just pure cheating. And obviously that makes a very, very interesting a way of looking at insuring this, because it really is growing. When it comes to esports insurance, Beasley and CFC in London are leading the way, and they cover players, digital events, digital interruption. It's really becoming a big thing. I'm not sure if SHA has done anything around that area, but potentially would be quite interesting. But just to give you some scale, or some idea of scale, the previous League of Legends esports event was watched by 5 million concurrent users, say about 5 million people. That's more people that dial into, or watch a news channel at any given time. And then when it comes to the most important part that I believe has been negatively impacted or coroned, and how can technology help, is the people. When this all happened, we were confused, we were concerned. Nobody would have thought about everybody having to go home, at the same time, while we were worried about our families, our jobs, and the future. It was a very, very scary time. And honestly, who would have sat here and gone, right, let's send everybody home in one go and try and run an insurance industry. And I was thinking about, who would be crazy enough to actually think about something like that. And I actually found a picture when I believe this is the actual moment that Elon probably thought about it, when he had a nice big drag on Joe Rogan's podcast. But that's the kind of level of crazy thinking that you would have to send everybody home. It would be a man who shot a car into space while playing David Bowie. And whilst we've got him on the screen, big congrats to him. Yesterday, Tesla hit $1,000 a share to become the most valuable car company in the world. And that is really, really incredible. And just talking about this podcast where he got into a little bit of trouble for having a bit of a spliff, is that was Joe Rogan's podcast. Now, I'm not sure if anybody listens to it. I'm sure many people do because he's got millions of followers. But just to put it into perspective about how big Joe Rogan's podcast is and potentially the risks around this, is that on a monthly basis, he reaches half the viewership of CNN, 2/3 the viewership of NBC, and 1/3 of Fox's viewership. He just sold that podcast for $100 million. That just shows you the scale of where digital is going. People are pivoting towards us as the real world becomes further from them, out of reach. And there really is a lot of scale behind this, and how technology has helped. And then just towards closing off, what now? We were all told to go home and work remotely and use Zoom. But you know what? Guess what we did? And we can be proud of it. Everybody that is sitting here today, all 171 people that have logged on, we have all adopted technology, and it's for the better. It's gone all the way from the grannies sitting in the coast at their retirement village to the hotshot startup associates at KPMG and Deloitte. Everybody has adopted it, and everybody has done it. No one thought we were going to do it, but we have. Some other upsides is, productivity. Our productivity is up 26%, and that's fantastic. But does it come at a cost? This is the big thing, is that, HR is now having to deal with new issues that have never existed before. Onboarding talent remotely and digitally. We have things like Zoom fatigue. Every single person is now sitting in several hours of Zoom a day. And I posted an article about it recently that actually showed, and it talks to why we find it so tiring and fatiguing to sit on Zoom. And it's because we don't have that human interaction anymore. So much of our brain has been evolved to pick up on body language. We don't have it anymore. We don't have that nuanced kind of signaling to each other. So we have to use other parts of our brain to continuously concentrate. And also is that we when you're sitting in a Zoom meeting, you are looking at yourself the whole time. Now, imagine standing in front of a big stage and doing a presentation with having a mirror that you have to then look at yourself the whole time. Only the most self-absorbed social media influencers would be happy with having a mirror looking at themselves the whole time. But there's also been some cool upsides. Now I'm talking to you from London as if I was sitting in Sandton. Doesn't matter. And this really should make us think about where we can get our talent pools from. Our talent pools has now gone global. Tim Cook from Apple famously said that they don't go to China because it's cheaper. They go to China because the sheer volume of the talent there is incredible. And I think his words were around it. The talent that they need, if they had to put all that talent into a single room in the US, it would potentially fill a conference venue. In China, it would fill multiple stadiums. So the thinking is that why can't an actuary that's sitting in Bloom work for an insurer in Sandton? And it could be mutually beneficial because now all of a sudden, you as an organization can start looking for talent on a much, much further horizon. Also, people that are sitting in remote locations don't have to charge the low rates that they do, So someone sitting in Bloom can charge a little bit more than they would have working for a company sitting in Sandton. The company in Sandton makes a little bit more money. The guy in Bloom makes a little bit more money. Everybody wins, and technology will help enable that. Very importantly is that we are also now remote ready. So let's carry on using it. There's no need for us to go back to complete normal again. Whilst we are, the pendulum will swing back. Spotify has now come out and said, guess what, guys, we are not ever going back to the office. Everybody's going to work remotely going forward. They've just made the decision and done it. And why not? If you're a digital company, you can do that. And that is fantastic. But the one thing that I personally have found as a little bit of a downside to always having technology-based meetings and doing meetings via tech is the element of those chance meetings has now fallen away. How many cool things have happened from bumping into someone at the water cooler or bumping into someone in the canteen, or when you're walking from one office to another and you bump into a colleague or potential client? Lots of cool things have happened from chance meetings. We must just be aware that that is not the case. You don't bump into someone on Zoom unless they Zoom bomb you, like Candice was mentioning earlier, and I don't think that will end well in any case. But we also need to make sure that while productivity is up and the Zoom fatigue is coming, that we need to make some adjustments on our side as employers for our teams. And I've got it on good authority that one of the big telecommunication companies is going to give the entire company an extra day off in the coming weeks, all of it, not just the department, the entire company, because everybody's been working so hard and the productivity has been up. A very cool InsureTech in a place called Leather Market, called Coverly, they've implemented something called the wellness window. And that is simply that during lunchtime, no one is allowed on Zoom ever. Go spend time with your family and unwind a little bit. And then the last point that I would probably ask people to consider when it comes to Zoom meetings is that I posted an article about it also a couple of days ago, is that just change the timing of your meetings. Instead of having a half-an-hour meeting, have a 25-minute meeting. Instead of having an hour meeting, have a 50-minute meeting. Those 5 minutes really allow you to unpack the previous meeting, unwind a little bit, and prepare for the next one. Back-to-back Zoom meetings are simply not effective and efficient. But I think the best thing about being stuck at home and being allowed to use technology to run our business is that we get to spend a lot of time with our family. And that's really, really cool. So with that, I just want to say we are all humans. We cannot keep up with machines. We shouldn't try. Put ourselves and our well-being first. And then stay safe and be part of the change, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andre. Great talk. I think when we talk about the exponential impact of digital and social media, we throw the term viral around. And I think Corona just reminded us of exactly how powerful and pervasive the viral effect actually is. But thank you for your talk. Now, as you are aware, CN&CO events are in the business of connecting people, and that goes beyond the borders of the insurance industry. Our next speaker is Paul Gerber, and I hope I don't get a tongue twister here. I tried this not with a few drinks, but Colmant Cup Classique and champagne. I'm sure, Paul, when anyone leaves your establishment in Franschhoek, they probably can't repeat that without stumbling. But yeah, I want to welcome Paul, and he's got a special guest with him, which is Amy Hopkins from Women's Health. And really a warm welcome to both of you. Welcome to our insurance industry and our little online family for the day. The screen is yours.
Cool. Thanks, Simon. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, Amy. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Cool. Yeah, and thanks for the space to tell you a little bit about what we do. And I chatted to Amy, and she's gonna share some of her thoughts on South African Cup Classique and some champagne. We've had a few glasses together before, so she's very interested, and her opinion counts. And Amy has some ideas about recipes and pairings. But just to give you a quick introduction to Colmar, is the first specialist Cup Classique seller in South Africa. So in 2005, Jean-Philippe Colmar built Colmar Cup Classique and Champagne cellars here in Franschhoek, and with the view to creating a grower champagne style of Cup Classique. Nice, fine, lean, elegant wines, and that's been the pursuit. And we continue that into the future. So I'll introduce you to some of the wines as we go, but I'll show you 4 wines today. We're not going to drink in front of you. I know you all have to go back to the office, so no one's having a drink just yet. And then we bring in 3 champagnes that have a special relationship with the cellar. Either Jean-Philippe or I spend time with the cellars. They are personal friends, and we respect the quality of their wines. But yeah, and then just by a short introduction, Amy from Women's Health. As I say, has been a good consumer of Colmar and the other bubblies, in fact. And yeah, Amy.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks for having us here today and for inviting me to join. I'm very passionate about wine and bubbly, and I've made my own wine as well, red wine, but Paul has kindly invited me in the past to do a harvest with him, so I learned a lot about the bubbly making process, and I was lucky enough to visit Colmar just before we went into lockdown. It was just, in fact, as isolation had begun to hit South Africa. So we have a relationship going back, and it has been wonderful to just learn more about what he's doing at Colmar. We had already been, he introduced me to a lot of the bubbly making stuff when he was previously at Lelude as well. Sorry, 1 second.
No, I'll take over. So, Michael, thanks for the message. Wonderful that you love our liquid. We do too. But just a little bit more background about our wines. We use only Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. In terms of production, we look for various specialist sites, Robertson, Bonnievale, Elgin, that give us these really unique characters to the wine, nice freshness, nice acidity. But the thing that we really strive for is to show the ripeness of the fruit in South Africa, but elegance and finesse. It's one of the things that I really love about Cup Classique and Champagne is it's a light, elegant wine. It's lower alcohol, and it always leaves the palate fresh. You have this kind of almost it's the perfect aperitif before a meal. Your palate is clean, fresh before you start something. We just also, you'll see we have offered everyone that's viewing the InsureTalk3 today, you can pop across to our web store and use the coupon InsureTalk250, and you have 250 Rand discount from your first order with us. There's no time limit on that, so if you need a few days, but those of you that are thirsty, pop across. So, Amy, to get the ball rolling, your favorite time of the day to have a glass of Cup Classique or champagne?
Oh my goodness, I wish I could have one right now, but I'm also working this afternoon. I think if it is the weekend, if you do have time to take a day to enjoy some delicious bubbly, it would generally be for me after I've had a nice cycle in the morning, maybe with a bit of brunch, some very crisp, fresh, quite light bubbly just to sort of kick off the day. Paul, do you want to tell us a bit more about some of those that you would recommend for almost a brunch kind of experience?
Yes, yeah, Abby, that's a fantastic. We do a lot of our tasting when we blend early in the morning. Your palate's the freshest, clean. But yes, 100% right. I'm not quite the high performance athlete you are, but after a little mountain bike around the block, I think an excellent way to start the day is with a brut reserve. So it's a blend of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. It's got nice fruit, so there's a wonderful texture from the fruit, but that freshness and acidity is perfect though. Maybe with even some oysters early in the morning or a croissant or something like that.
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of oysters, so I totally buy into, drank the Kool-Aid, I'm into that oyster and bubbly combo full on. So.
No, I think one of the nicest things is that the freshness and acidity from Cap Classique and Champagne really bring out those kind of natural flavors that you have in seafoods, especially like an oyster. And so you don't even need anything to put on it. You just can have it fresh, nicely chilled. Yeah. And before, when we were chatting about the talk today, I shared with Amy, he had a wonderful, there's a chef in Franschhoek, Foliage, and he made a porcini soup. And it's pouring at the moment in Franschhoek. In fact, we have our first snow of the season on the mountains here. And I was telling Amy, we had this porcini soup the other day with rosé. So also just to show that rosé and that kind of the nice deepness of Pinot Noir goes really well with a soup, or a nice something that warms you from inside as well.
Absolutely. I think, and Paul, one of my favorite dishes to make during the week is a mushroom risotto. It's just easy and quick and kind of a comfort food now during the colder months. It is freezing in Cape Town as well. I'm in Sea Point and it's raining like crazy. So I'll be making risotto later today. And I find the mushrooms and the rosé of the champagne just go so beautifully together as a pairing. And it's almost like those rich sort of meatier, like a charcuterie for me also is a great combination for rosé, bubbly. And of course, chocolates and berries as well. So if you're having a bit of dessert afterwards too. And yes, I'm from Women's Health. And of course, we look at creating a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And that does include some treats and indulgence, of course, because we are all human after all. But why bubbly is such a nice offering is that it's generally lower in calories and a little bit lighter in alcohol. And I think that's quite nice for me, particularly. I think all the cycling, Paul, like you mentioned, it just means my tolerance is a bit lower.
You can have an extra glass in me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting that you say that, just to keep going on with that idea. But we noticed that with rosé, slightly less acidity, and you kind of have this richness from the fruit, the ripeness from the fruit on the rosé that works really well. And I think people underestimate how bubbly can work for dessert or at the end of the meal, also just to finish off at the end of the meal. And maybe coming on to that, I wanted to talk about cheeses. I know when you were here last, I think you guys stopped at a famous little cheese shop in Franschhoek, La Côte. And it's really fantastic to see champagnes, sometimes older, more vintage champagnes or Cap Classique paired with cheese. And I'd really like to hear some of your favorites for those of you that are cheese fans and looking at pairing cheese and Cap Classique. I think there is a wonderful opportunity to do that at NL. Can you hear me, Amy?
Sorry, I just lost you there for a second. Yes, so I think I think what's so great is that working with the different textures and flavors that come from the bubbly, I think what's delicious about those kind of richer cheeses is that the acidity from the bubbly and the textures of the bubbles can just sort of cut through some of that a little bit, but it also highlights the beautiful flavor. And I think for those cheeses that are, you know, if you're looking at something perhaps a little bit more blue, then you almost have slightly sweeter bubbly, something a little bit more like a demi-sec, which will go well with that. They just help to really balance out those flavors. So I think those are really good options for pairing with the cheese. And of course, not only the cheese, but what you put it on, the biscuits, the croissants, you know, it's all about playing with those biscuity, bready, brioche flavors as well. So I think, you know, of course, we're fortunate to, Franschhoek is the most special valley because there's such incredible produce coming from the region, and obviously to support those local farmers and produce makers and have that with the local bubbly. It's just that it's such a nice combination of having food, that sense of place, you know, the terroir, not only of the bubbly but also the cheese. And yeah, I think there are lots of different ways to play with the flavors. I think especially if you have even something like a Gruyere or something that's a little bit nuttier, you can, I think that goes with more like a classic bubbly. So those are kind of my ideas for the pairings that would work, Paul.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's such a wonderful point. One of the champagnes that we import is Lemonil, and it's the small village in Lemonil-sur-Gers, right kind of in the Côte Blanc. And one of my favorite things is just outside the village on the slope is to buy a baguette from the local baker and sit there and have cheese. And you can see in harvest time, you can see the guys harvesting. And yeah, like you say, a way of life, enjoying cheese and taking a moment to enjoy life like that. And I often think Chardonnay or richer, older Chardonnays are the way to go with cheese. Thank you, Albert, for commenting there. Yeah, the Dale cheeses are absolutely incredible. I love, they make one called Huguenot, and Amy was speaking about the Gruyere. The Huguenot is a slightly sweeter, nutty version of Gruyere almost for me, but I think a fantastic cheese and definitely a cheese to be enjoyed at the end of a meal. And then maybe just also to finish off or near the end, to speak about the Prestige Cuvées. So Prestige Cuvées is the offering that a cellar would have where they've aged the wines for longer. In the case of Colmar, our Brut Reserve are for only 3 years, and the Blanc de Blanc and the Absolut, which are 100% Chardonnay, are aged for 5 to 7 years. And we notice with wines like that, the Chardonnay really tends to work better for longer aging. And I think my personal favorite for something like this is a cheese souffle. So if you are daring, I don't know if you have tips for us, Amy, on cheese souffle, but one of my favorite things is kind of the richness from the souffle, but also the lightness and the elegance. Yeah.
No, Paul, I have to let you down here. I'm not a souffle expert, but I think what I do find interesting is that, you know, you underestimate some of the pairings with bubbly. I know we spoke earlier about having it for brunch, but actually egg-based dishes go really well with bubbly. So it's a bit of a pairing that you might not think about, but I think typically why it serves so deliciously with a brunch meal is not only because it's a bit lighter, but eggs tend to go really well with bubbly. And another interesting pairing is fried food. So like tempura veggies, also really nice to have for starters or canapes. That tends to pair really well with bubbly. And I was talking to Paul about this earlier, but I love serving like a homemade curry or some Thai food with some bubbly as well. And here you can even look at going to some of the slightly almost demi-sec bubblies, depending on this sort of spiciness level. Obviously, I can't cook too spicy in my house because my partner doesn't love that much chili. But I do make a lot of like veggie curries and Thai curries in winter. And I think they, you know, when it's difficult to sometimes think of a wine or what to serve guests when you are having those kinds of foods, and bubbly just tends to really go well with all of those flavors. It just allows the flavors to kind of shine. So yeah, I think sorry about the souffle, Paul. But
I think one of the things that you know, with a wine style like this is, I think people should experiment more. Often, I think in the past, always a couple of Seco champagne was only at the beginning of the meal. Now we can see it can be enjoyed throughout the meal. And like you said, with the sec reserve, with or a demi-sec, if you prefer something sweeter, I think the wine has more texture and body in being able to survive like that. And also, whilst you were talking about that, I just thought, like on a health note, salads in summer as well. Do you have any pairing tips there? I've seen some incredible posts on your social media about your summer salads.
So I think, so I do love making salads. I love fresh veggies and salad ingredients. I know there's been a lot of talk about e-commerce and the growing levels of e-commerce in South Africa. I've been ordering my veggie boxes and I've just been loving having to come up with these dishes, even though now we're moving closer into winter. But I think, Paul, what's so important for me about putting together one of those beautiful salads that isn't you know, a boring plate of lettuce and like the Greek salads of the 90s, but it's to incorporate different textures, different flavors. So you want crunch from like toasted nuts, you want beautiful like sauteed asparagus or broccoli, something put in there that's also a bit of fibrous protein, so like your chickpeas or quinoa. And it's all about building those flavors and layers of textures that that can make a salad a meal on its own. And I think particularly those pair so well with bubbly. I'm talking about like asparagus, that's so great with like a nice cap classique, just sort of a general a brut, and also those lemony flavors. So I love using lemon as a dressing, and I think that works really well with the bubbly as a combination. So I do a simple salad dressing, which is basically just lemon juice, olive oil, a little bit of mustard, and a tiny bit of honey, and just that combination is really fresh and versatile and goes with quite a variety of salads, and just helps to bring out those flavors. And the fresh herbs, Paul, I think what's also so nice is playing with the combinations of the herbs like your basil, your coriander, and you know, using that to pair also with your different bubblies. We actually had a fun evening a little while ago. It was before lockdown, of course, but we sort of played with the idea of doing a 3-course meal with bubbly alone, and it was so much fun. And you know, you sort of start with I love a real sort of brut zero, very crisp and dry, just to kind of start off, and then we moved into you know, so we had a bit of a salady stuff, a light starter, and then we had a little roast, and we moved into more of a classic brut, and then we ended with some bubbly rosé I did a pavlova, which was just sort of a healthy take on pavlova. So it was like a meringue base, of course, and then some berry sorbet with some fresh berries. It was just a beautiful, perfect combination, because the sweetness of the meringue with the tartness of the berries and the rosé bubbly just worked so well together.
Yeah, fantastic. And then maybe just quickly, whilst we're wrapping it up, to say also zero dosage, like you said, so there's no sugar added at
I think we've lost you, Paul.
I've lost him as
very
well.
diverse.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, Paul, you disappeared for a second there.
Okay. Am I back now?
You're back, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just maybe to say zero dosage is, I think, a wine that has optimal aging from about 7 years, and you don't need to add dosage to, and it has a wonderful balance. In the case of what we do, it's 7 years, but we reserve wine in a perpetual reserve. And a perpetual reserve basically means that some of the best wine we have from each vintage, 2006 all the way through to what we're busy bottling now. In fact, the guys are waiting for me to return to the filtering, but we keep a little bit of that wine and we keep back blending it into this perpetual reserve. And it's that wonderful combination of having a wine that has tradition, like you said, a sense of wow, because it comes from place. But one of the things that we really want to strive to do, or what I'd like to do in making wine, is it will be wonderful that I can leave a wine that my son can serve to his son. And I think if we are looking at things that we want to achieve with wine, that we look to age. But we're about to finish. Amy, thanks so much for today. Thanks for making the time to chat to us and give us some tips. And definitely looking forward to the next glass with you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having us, everyone. And thank you, Paul, for inviting me. Also, just good to see your face. And soon we'll be having some bubbly together again.
Cool. Thanks. Likewise. Thanks, Simon. Thanks so much for the opportunity to show our wine and talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, thank you, Paul and Amy. And I apologize for exposing myself as a teetotaling plebeian, mispronouncing Colmar, but great talk. And I have to tell you, my mouth was watering whilst I don't drink, but I certainly do eat. And that was amazing. So just a reminder to all of you that there's no lucky draw winner today, but Colmar have sponsored these vouchers. So as you go through their checkout on their website, you can put in the coupon. The details are in the chat. And I believe that you're all being emailed those voucher details as well. And yeah, I think that, yeah, fabulous talk. Such a great mixture of things we've had on today's conference. It's been an absolute pleasure to MC it. But before we go, I should just let you know that Larry Soffer, we had such a great response that he's coming back for an encore. Larry, are you there? Llewellyn, can we bring Larry back on the screen? Hey, Larry.
Hi, Simon. Good to be back. I'm so glad everybody had a great time.
Yeah, look, the comments in the chat were amazing. So well done on your performance earlier. So you're going to do something for us now?
Yeah, totally. There's a part in my show where I actually would bend metal in my live show. I haven't done it really over the screen before. I have been on radio where I make people's spoons and forks bend in their own homes. And I make their light bulbs burst, their TV switch on, weird and wonderful things happen, and people call in on the radio call. I've even done this on some live TV shows. So I thought I would just give you a little demonstration of this, just as some eye candy. You can see it's a fork. If you were here live with me, you'd be able to touch the fork and make sure that it's nice and solid. And I'll even just bang it over here. You can nice and solid, yes? So look, if I take it and I shake it just like this, you can actually see it starting to bend.
Wow.
All the way down.
Wow.
I'll try a little bit further without touching it. You can see that on the screen, right?
Yes.
Here we go, watch.
What the fork?
Now,
that's
what's
amazing,
even crazy,
Larry.
Well, thank you. And what's even crazy, and you can feel this fork. If you were here with me, you'd be able to feel it. You'd be able to touch it. It's extremely solid. In fact, I thought I'd take this a little bit further and even try and reach you in your own home, if that's okay with you. Do you have a teaspoon with you, some piece of metal or something like that?
I don't have a I don't have a spoon with me. I've got a screwdriver.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yeah,
I mean,
we can try
not,
something with
it's
that.
not completely metal, but
yeah, it's a bit of plastic.
Could we
and
do
a bit
something
of
with this?
I can try. I can try. I mean, screwdrivers are extremely solid, so I'm going to try this out. I want you to hold the screwdriver just like this toward the screen so everybody can see this.
Okay, how's that?
And just
like
keep
that.
Yeah, keep it more in your fingers, and we're going to try and make this bend. So I want you to focus. Now, I believe that the only way that this is possible is if we really believe, okay? And first of all, the reason why I've managed to be able to do this over the screen is because I believe that the only times that we failed in our life is when we didn't apply the knowledge we already knew, or we didn't have the knowledge to begin with. So I believe that the way that we can create the impossible is by applying what we know, or going out and getting the knowledge we need to create real magic. So right now, I want you to focus on this, and I'm going to try and
Larry,
something across the screen.
feels like it's happening already.
Okay, it will start to happen even more, and you'll actually start to see that screwdriver start to bend. Just believe it, and if you just go with this with me, Simon, this will actually happen. Can you see it bending there? It's actually starting to bend. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Can you feel? You can feel it moving in your hand, right?
I feel something happening on the side here.
You can see.
I don't know if everyone can see that.
Try and bend it even more. That's a little bit more, a little bit more. Can you hold it in your hand like this?
Like this?
Yes. And just try and push energy into the screwdriver, and we're going to make this start to bend even more. That's it. That's it. Here we go. You can feel it, and you can actually see it starting to bend, right? Look at that. Look at that. It's actually bending.
Yes.
You can feel it, right?
I can feel it, and it's getting hotter as well. I'm actually going to have to stop holding it there.
Okay, cool.
Can I do that?
Show everybody. Show everybody. If you rub it a little bit more, Simon, we can get it even more. We can get it to bend even more. Just rub it and let it. Just let it. That's it. That's it. Just start to believe. Just really believe.
I got to tell you at home, it's an old solid screwdriver.
You're doing so good. You can see it bending even further. Look at that. Look at that.
I can feel it.
Look at that.
Well, Larry, this is perfect for screwing around corners. Actually,
yeah, to go around corners, exactly.
Wow, that is really amazing. So,
I owe you a screwdriver, Simon.
Yeah, a drink. Cheers to the screwdriver. No, well, that's amazing. Thank you. Thanks,
did
Larry.
That. You believed and you made it happen.
I made it happen. Yes, thank you. Thank you once again for joining us on the show. So yeah, folks, that really concludes today's proceedings. So just once again, I'd like to thank our headline partners, SHA Risk Specialists, our event partners, CIB, Santam, and Genesis, and definitely all of our speakers for taking the time out of their day and just really joining us and sharing their insights. And to all of you, the attendees in the industry who make this possible and keep our industry as one of the main economic drivers during the COVID-19 pandemic. I really appreciate you tuning in today. To Larry Soffer for blowing our minds and bending my screwdriver here. And of course to the IISA for assisting us with the CPD accreditation. Please don't forget your tickets for InsureTalk3. That's on the 16th of July, sponsored by Santam. The bookings are now open on the CN&CO events.com page, and there is an early bird discount of 10%. And yeah, really, that is all we have time for today, folks. I really appreciate you joining. See you on the 16th of July. Thanks.